I tell you now, as I have told countless others who have sat where you sit tonight, that the very idea that you must do something external to receive what you desire is the greatest lie ever perpetuated upon humanity. It is this lie that keeps you running on the hamster wheel of endless action, forever chasing, forever seeking, forever believing that your good lies somewhere outside of you, waiting to be earned through struggle and toil. Tonight, I want to shatter that illusion completely. I want to show you that everything you have ever desired, everything you have ever dreamed of, every state of being you have ever longed to experience already exists within you at this very moment. Not as a potential, not as a possibility, but as an absolute reality waiting to be claimed through the simple act of assumption. You see, most of you have been conditioned to believe that the world you perceive with your senses is the cause of your experiences. You look at your bank account and say, I am poor because I see emptiness there. You look at your relationships and say, I am unloved because I see evidence of rejection. You look at your circumstances and say, I am limited because these walls confine me. But I tell you that you have it completely backwards. The world you see is not the cause of anything. It is merely the shadow cast by your own consciousness, the external reflection of your internal states. Your bank account is empty because you have assumed the feeling of poverty. Your relationships are troubled because you have assumed the feeling of being unloved. Your circumstances are limited because you have assumed the feeling of limitation. The external world is nothing more than a mirror, faithfully reflecting back to you the assumptions you hold to be true about yourself. This is why I can stand before you tonight and declare with absolute certainty that you need do nothing external to change your world. The work, if we can even call it work, is entirely internal. It is the work of changing your assumptions, of revising your concept of self, of daring to assume that you are already the person you wish to become, already living in the state you wish to experience. But before we go further, let me address the elephant in the room. When I say do nothing, I do not mean that you should become passive, lazy, or indifferent to life. What I mean is that you should cease all frantic action that stems from the belief that your good is separate from you. Stop chasing. Stop seeking. Stop trying to make things happen through force and manipulation. Instead, learn to live from the assumption that what you desire is already yours, and watch as the external world rearranges itself to match this inner conviction. The ancient teaching tells us that God's name is I Am, and that this sacred name dwells within each of us. When you say I am, you are speaking from the very throne of creation itself. You are not describing what you appear to be in the world of shadows. You are declaring what you choose to be in the realm of reality. Every time you complete the sentence I am with anything, you are either claiming your divinity or denying it. When you say I am wealthy, you are not making a statement about your bank account. You are assuming the feeling of wealth, the consciousness of abundance, the very essence of prosperity itself. When you say I am loved, you are not referring to how others treat you. You are claiming the state of being beloved, the consciousness of worthiness, the very feeling of love fulfilled. When you say I am free, you are not describing your external circumstances. You are assuming the state of freedom, the consciousness of liberation, the very essence of unbound possibility. Now, here is where most people stumble. They think that assuming these states means pretending or lying to themselves. They believe they must somehow convince themselves that their external circumstances have changed when they clearly haven't. But this is not what I'm teaching at all. I'm not asking you to deny what your senses report. I'm asking you to recognize that what your senses report is simply the outpicturing of yesterday's assumptions, and that you have the power to plant new assumptions that will create new experiences. Think of it this way. When you plant a seed in the ground, you don't dig it up every day to see if it's growing. You don't worry and fret and wonder if it will grow. You simply trust that the seed contains within itself everything necessary for its full expression, and you go about your life knowing that in due time you will see the harvest. The same principle applies to your assumptions. When you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you have planted the seed of experience in the fertile soil of consciousness. You don't need to help it grow. You don't need to manipulate circumstances to make it happen. You simply need to maintain the assumption and trust that it contains within itself everything necessary for its full manifestation. But let me be even more specific about what I mean by doing nothing. I mean that you cease all action that comes from a sense of lack, limitation, or separation from your desire. When you feel compelled to act from desperation, from fear that your desire won't come to pass, from a sense that you must make something happen, this is the action I'm telling you to cease. This kind of action actually pushes desire away from you because it springs from the assumption that you don't already have what you want. Instead, the only action you should take is action that flows naturally from the assumption that you already are what you wish to be. If you have assumed the feeling of wealth and an investment opportunity presents itself, you might feel moved to investigate it, not from a desperate need to become wealthy, but from the natural curiosity of someone who already is wealthy. If you have assumed the feeling of being loved and someone attractive enters your life, you might feel moved to engage with them, not from a desperate need to find love, but from the natural confidence of someone who already knows they are beloved. You see the difference? One type of action comes from lack and actually reinforces the very state you're trying to escape. The other type of action comes from fulfillment and serves to externalize the state you have already claimed internally. The first type of action is what I'm telling you to cease. The second type of action will happen naturally and effortlessly once you've truly assumed your desired state. Now, let me share with you the secret that makes all of this possible. Every state of consciousness, every possible experience, every conceivable condition already exists in what I call the infinite states of being. Poverty exists as a state. Wealth exists as a state. Sickness exists as a state. Health exists as a state. Loneliness exists as a state. Love exists as a state. They all exist simultaneously, and you move between them not through external action, but through the simple act of assumption. Right now, as I speak these words, there is a version of you that is wealthy beyond measure. There is a version of you that is perfectly healthy. There is a version of you that is deeply loved and cherished. There is a version of you that is free from every limitation you currently experience. These are not fantasies or wishful thinking. These are actual states of being that exist in the realm of infinite possibility. The question is not whether these states exist, they do. The question is not whether you deserve to experience them, you do. The question is not whether it's possible for you to access them, it is. The only question is, which state will you choose to assume? Which version of yourself will you choose to be? And here's the beautiful part. The moment you assume a state, you become it. Not in some future time, not when conditions are right, not when you've done enough or worked hard enough or proven yourself worthy. Right now, in this very moment, as you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you become the person who already has what you desire. The external world may take some time to catch up and reflect this new assumption. But in the realm of consciousness, which is the only realm that truly matters, the transformation is instantaneous. This is why I can tell you to do nothing after this and watch how everything falls into place. Because once you've truly assumed your desired state, once you've claimed your good in consciousness, the entire universe must rearrange itself to match your assumption. This is not magic or wishful thinking. This is the fundamental law of consciousness, the very principle upon which all creation operates. But I must warn you about something. Your rational mind will resist this teaching with everything it has. It will tell you that you're being foolish, that you're living in a fantasy, that you need to be realistic about your situation. It will point to your current circumstances as evidence that your assumptions don't work. It will remind you of past failures and convince you that this time will be no different. This resistance is natural and expected. Your rational mind has been trained to believe in the reality of the external world, to put its faith in what can be seen and touched and measured. But I'm asking you to put your faith in something far more substantial, the creative power of your own consciousness. I am asking you to recognize that what you call reality is nothing more than the externalization of beliefs and assumptions you've held for so long that you've forgotten you chose them. When doubt arises, and it will, don't fight it. Don't try to convince yourself that your desire is already manifested when all evidence seems to suggest otherwise. Instead, simply return to the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Assume the state you wish to experience and rest in that assumption. Remember that feelings are the language of the subconscious mind, and it is through feeling that all transformation takes place. Let me give you a practical example of how this works. Suppose you desire to be financially free. Instead of focusing on how you might achieve this freedom, instead of making plans and taking action from a place of financial lack, you would begin by assuming the feeling of already being financially free. You would sit quietly and imagine what it would feel like to have complete financial security. Not what you would do with the money, not what you would buy, but the actual feeling of financial freedom itself. How would you feel if you never had to worry about money again? How would you feel if you could make any purchase without concern for the cost? How would you feel if you had complete control over your time because you weren't bound by financial necessity? Capture that feeling, embody it, live in it. Make it as real and natural as the feeling of being yourself, because that's exactly what it is. It's the feeling of being the version of yourself that already has financial freedom. Once you've assumed this feeling, once you've made it natural and familiar, you do nothing else. You don't chase opportunities. You don't force yourself to work harder. You don't try to manipulate circumstances. You simply live from the assumption that you are already financially free. And you allow the external world to conform to this inner conviction. This doesn't mean you become passive or lazy. It means that any action you take comes from the feeling of already having what you desire, rather than from the desperate need to get it. If opportunities present themselves, you evaluate them from the consciousness of wealth, not from the consciousness of lack. If inspiration strikes you to pursue a particular path, you follow it from the confidence of someone who already has financial freedom, not from the fear of someone who desperately needs it. The same principle applies to every area of your life. If you desire love, assume the feeling of being loved. If you desire health, assume the feeling of perfect vitality. If you desire success, assume the feeling of having already achieved your goals. In each case, you're not trying to get something you don't have. You're claiming something that already exists within the infinite states of being. Now, I want to address something that troubles many people when they first encounter this teaching. They ask, if everything already exists, if all states are already available, then why do we experience lack and limitation at all? Why isn't everyone already living in their desired state? The answer is simple, because most people don't know that they have the power to choose their state. They believe they are victims of circumstance, that their experiences are determined by external forces beyond their control. They look at their current situation and assume it's permanent, that it defines who they are and what's possible for them. But you are not most people. You are here tonight because something within you recognizes the truth of what I'm sharing. You sense that there's more to life than what you've been experiencing. You feel the stirring of a power within you that is capable of transforming every aspect of your existence. That power is your imagination, your ability to assume any state you choose and to live from that assumption until it becomes your external reality. Your imagination is not a mere faculty for daydreaming or fantasy. It is the creative power of God individualized in you. It is through imagination that you move between states of being. It is through imagination that you claim your good. It is through imagination that you transform your world. When you imagine yourself as already being the person you wish to become, when you feel yourself into the state you wish to experience, you are not pretending or make-believing. You are exercising the highest function of human consciousness. You are participating in the very act of creation itself. This is why the Bible tells us that God created man in his own image. You are made in the image of the Creator, which means you have the same creative power. The only difference is that God creates from the state of perfect fulfillment, knowing that all things are possible, while most humans create from states of lack and limitation, believing that their good is separate from them. But tonight you have the opportunity to change all of that. Tonight you can choose to create from the same state of perfect where God creates from. You can assume that you already are everything you wish to be, that you already have everything you desire, that you already live in the state of complete satisfaction and joy. And when you make this assumption, when you really feel yourself into this state, something miraculous happens. The entire structure of your reality begins to shift. Not through your efforts, not through your struggling, not through your trying to make things happen, but through the natural operation of consciousness itself. You see, consciousness is always externalizing itself. It cannot help but create external conditions that match its internal assumptions. This is not something you have to make happen. It's something that happens automatically, inevitably, lawfully. Your job is not to figure out how your assumption will manifest. Your job is simply to assume it and to persist in that assumption until it becomes as natural as breathing. This brings me to another crucial point. Many people assume their desired state for a few days or weeks, and when they don't see immediate external changes, they become discouraged and abandon their assumption. They go back to their old patterns of thinking and feeling, and then wonder why nothing changed. But I tell you that assumption is like planting a seed. You don't plant a seed today and expect to harvest fruit tomorrow. You plant the seed and you tend it with patient confidence, knowing that it contains within itself everything necessary for its full expression. You water it with your attention, you protect it from the weeds of doubt and fear, and you trust that in due season you will see the harvest. The same patience and persistence is required with your assumptions. When you assume a state, you've planted the seed of that experience in consciousness. It will grow and manifest in external form, but you must give it time. You must maintain your assumption even when the external world hasn't yet caught up. You must live from your desired state even when your senses report otherwise. This is what I mean by faith. Not faith in something external to yourself, not faith in a distant God who may or may not answer your prayers, but faith in the creative power of your own consciousness. Faith that your assumptions are creative. Faith that consciousness is always externalizing itself. Faith that what you assume to be true about yourself must, by the very nature of consciousness itself, become your external reality. Now let me share with you a profound secret that will accelerate your understanding of this principle. There is no time in consciousness. Past, present, and future are merely constructs of the rational mind. In consciousness, everything exists in an eternal now. This means that when you assume a state, you're not creating something new. You're claiming something that already exists in the timeless realm of being. Your desired state exists right now. The version of you that has everything you want exists right now. The experience you long for exists right now. Not in some future time when conditions are right, but right now in this eternal moment of consciousness. When you truly understand this, when you really grasp that your good already exists, and is available to you right now, you stop trying to make it happen and start allowing it to be. You stop efforting and struggling and start resting in the certainty of fulfillment. You stop chasing your desires and start living from them. This is the ultimate meaning of doing nothing. You do nothing to create your good because your good already exists. You do nothing to earn your desires because you already deserve them. You do nothing to make yourself worthy because you are already worthy. You simply assume the state of having what you want, and you rest in that assumption with perfect confidence. But here's what will happen when you truly embrace this teaching. The people around you will think you've lost your mind. They'll see you sitting quietly, apparently doing nothing to improve your situation, and they'll think you've given up. They'll offer advice about what you should be doing, what actions you should be taking, what steps you need to follow to get what you want. Ignore them. Not because they're bad people or because they don't care about you, but because they're operating from a completely different paradigm. They believe in the reality of the external world. They believe that change must come from outside in. They believe that you must do something to become something. But you now know better. You know that all change comes from within. You know that you don't become something by doing something. You do something by first becoming it in consciousness. You know that the external world is merely the shadow, and that all real change must first occur in the substance that cast the shadow, your own wonderful human imagination. So when others question your apparent inaction, when they wonder why you're not more concerned about your circumstances, when they ask what you're doing to solve your problems, you can smile knowingly and continue to rest in your assumption. You can continue to live from the end, to feel yourself into the state of your wish fulfilled, to be the person you wish to become. And as you persist in this assumption, as you make it more and more natural, something wonderful will begin to happen. The external world will start to shift in ways that seem miraculous to others but are perfectly natural to you. Opportunities will present themselves. Circumstances will align. People will come into your life who can help you. Resources will become available. Doors will open where once there were only walls. But here's the key. These external changes are not the cause of your transformation. They are the effect of it. They are not making you wealthy or healthy or love. They are simply reflecting the wealth and health and love that you have already claimed in consciousness. They are the shadow conforming to the substance, the external world matching the internal assumption. This is why you can do nothing and watch everything fall into place. Because once you've truly assumed your desired state, once you've claimed it in the only realm where claiming is possible, in consciousness, the entire universe must reorganize itself to match your assumption. This is not a favor the universe does for you. This is simply how consciousness works. This is the law of being itself. Now, I want to share with you the most profound aspect of this teaching. When you assume a state and persist in that assumption until it becomes natural, you don't just change your circumstances, you change who you are. You don't just get what you want, you become the person who has what you want. And once you become that person, having what you want is not an achievement or an acquisition. It's simply the natural expression of who you are. This is why the wealthy person attracts wealth effortlessly. It's not because they're doing something special or following some secret formula. It's because they have the consciousness of wealth. It's who they are, not what they do. This is why the healthy person maintains their health without struggle. It's because they have the consciousness of health. This is why the loved person is surrounded by love. It's because they have the consciousness of being beloved. When you assume a state and make it natural, you become that state. And when you become that state, having the external correlates of that state is as natural as having thoughts or feelings. You don't work to have thoughts. You simply have them because you are a thinking being. You don't struggle to have feelings. You simply have them because you are a feeling being. In the same way, when you become the state of wealth, you simply have wealth because wealth is the natural expression of who you have become. This is the secret that the mystical traditions have been pointing to for thousands of years. Be still and know that I am God. Be still, stop the frantic action that comes from believing your good is separate from you. No, assume, claim, become convinced that I am God, that the creative power of the universe exists within you as your own wonderful human imagination. When you are still, when you cease the outer activities that spring from inner insecurity, you create the space for your assumptions to take root and grow. When you know that you are the operant power in your own experience, you stop looking outside yourself for salvation and start claiming your good from within. But let me address one more concern that may be arising in your mind. You may be thinking, this sounds too good to be true. If it were really this simple, wouldn't everyone be living their ideal life? Wouldn't everyone be wealthy and healthy and happy? The answer is that it is this simple. But it's not easy for most people because they've been conditioned to believe in the opposite of what I'm teaching. They've been taught that the external world is real and that consciousness is just a byproduct of brain activity. They've been taught that they must work hard and struggle to get what they want. They've been taught that they are separate from their desires and must somehow bridge that gap through action. These beliefs are so deeply ingrained, so thoroughly accepted, that most people never question them. They live their entire lives operating from these assumptions, and their experiences faithfully reflect them. They struggle because they believe struggle is necessary. They lack because they believe lack is their natural state. They suffer because they believe suffering is unavoidable. But you have been given a different understanding. You have been shown the truth about the nature of consciousness and the power of assumption. You have been invited to see beyond the world of appearances to the world of causes. You have been offered the key to every prison you have ever imagined yourself to be in. The question now is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you dismiss it as too good to be true and return to your old patterns of struggle and striving? Will you try it for a few days and then abandon it when you don't see immediate results? Or will you embrace it fully, commit to it completely, and persist in your assumptions until they become your external reality? I hope you choose the latter, because you deserve to live the life of your dreams. You deserve to experience every good thing you have ever desired. You deserve to be wealthy and healthy and loved and free, not because of what you've done or what you might do, but simply because you exist, because you are consciousness itself individualized as a human being. And consciousness by its very nature is unlimited. It is infinite possibility, eternal expansion, boundless creativity. When you identify yourself with consciousness rather than with your circumstances, when you recognize that you are the I am that exists before all conditions and experiences, you discover that there is nothing you cannot be, nothing you cannot have, nothing you cannot experience. This is your true nature. This is who you really are. Not the struggling, seeking, limited being that appears in the world of shadows, but the unlimited, creative, divine being that exists in the realm of consciousness. When you know yourself as consciousness, when you operate from this level of being, you discover that you need do nothing to have everything, because everything already exists within you. So I leave you tonight with this final thought. You are not in the world is in you. Your circumstances are not determining your experience. Your consciousness is creating your circumstances. You are not at the mercy of external forces. You are the creative power that is expressing itself as your external world. Assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Persist in that assumption until it becomes natural. Live from the end, knowing that what you desire already exists and is available to you right now. Do nothing that springs from the belief that your good is separate from you, and do everything that flows from the assumption that you already are what you wish to become. When you do this, when you really understand and apply this principle, you will discover that you need do nothing after this. And you will watch and wonder as everything falls into place exactly as it should. Not through your efforts, not through your struggles, not through your attempts to make things happen, but through the natural, inevitable, lawful operation of consciousness itself. This is the promise I make to you tonight. This is the truth I share with you from the depths of my own experience and understanding. You have within you right now everything you need to transform your life completely. You need add nothing to yourself. You need do nothing external to claim your good. You need only assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled and persist in that assumption until it becomes your external reality. The power is yours. The choice is yours. The life you have always dreamed of living is yours for the claiming. All you need do is assume it, and everything else will fall into place exactly as it should.
In the silence of your heart, there is a truth that resonates louder than any voice God's plan for you is unshakable. Life may throw its fiercest storms, people may try to dim your light, and circumstances may attempt to block your path, but nothing can halt the divine orchestration of God's will in your life. His plan is not dependent on human approval, nor is it swayed by the opinion of fear or actions of others. It is rooted in His infinite wisdom and boundless love. When challenges arise, it is easy to feel forgotten or lost. You may wonder if the setbacks you face are signs of failure or abandonment. But remember, the obstacles in your way are not detours away from God's purpose, they are stepping stones. They are tools He uses to refine your character, strengthen your faith, and prepare you for the blessings He has already set aside for you. No trial is wasted when it is surrendered to God. There are moments when people may doubt you, criticize you, or even stand against you. Their words may sting, and their actions may seem to delay your progress. But let this truth settle in your soul: no weapon formed against you will prosper, because God's hand is upon you. The same God who parted the Red Sea, who raised Lazarus from the dead, and who conquered death itself is the one who has written your destiny. His plan does not falter because of human interference. He has already accounted for every challenge, every delay, and every mistake. You are not defined by your past or limited by your present. God sees the full picture. He knows the dreams He has placed in your heart, and He knows the right time and way to bring them to fruition. Trust that His timing is perfect. It may not always align with your expectations, but it is always for your good. When doors close, it's not because you are unworthy, it's because He has something far greater waiting for you. When delays occur, it's not because you are forgotten, it's because He is aligning circumstances in ways you cannot yet see. Faith is the anchor that holds you steady as you wait. It is the assurance that even when you cannot see the path ahead, the one who leads you sees it all. It is the confidence that His promises are not empty and His plans are not fragile. Stand firm in that faith. Speak life over your dreams, even when doubt whispers otherwise. Declare God's truth over your journey, even when the road feels uncertain. Your life is not a series of random events, it is a masterpiece in progress. Every brushstroke of joy and sorrow, every layer of triumph and trial is part of a grand design. God is the artist, and He is not finished yet. Trust Him to complete the work He has started in you. He is the author of your story, and no one else holds the pen. When fear tries to paralyze you, when disappointment tries to dishearten you, and when uncertainty tries to discourage you, remind yourself of this God's plan, for you cannot be stopped. Not by people, not by circumstances, and not by anything in this world. His love is your foundation, His grace is your strength, and His purpose for your life is unshakable. God's plan is unshakable. This truth is a foundation that cannot be moved, no matter the storms or challenges that arise in life. His plan is rooted in eternity, crafted with love and wisdom that surpasses human understanding. It is not something fragile or uncertain, nor is it influenced by the circumstances we see or the opinions of others. God's plan is like a mighty river, flowing with purpose and power, carving a path even through the hardest of obstacles. The world often presents us with a narrative that we must be in control of every detail of our lives, that our destiny depends solely on our efforts, or that unforeseen circumstances can derail our purpose. But this perspective is limited, for it fails to recognize the sovereignty of God. His plan for each of us was established long before we took our first breath. The scriptures remind us, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." These words are not mere encouragement, they are a declaration of certainty, a promise that transcends the temporal and anchors us in the eternal. There may be moments in life when it feels like everything is falling apart, as if the dreams we've cherished are slipping through our fingers. Doors may close, opportunities may vanish, and paths may seem blocked. It's in these moments that the strength of God's plan becomes evident. What appears to be a setback is often a setup for something greater. The delays and detours we face are not the end of the story, but chapters in the unfolding masterpiece of our lives. God's plan is not contingent on the conditions of the world or the cooperation of others. He moves beyond human limitations, working all things together for the good of those who love Him. Doubt may whisper that you are unworthy, that you have made too many mistakes, or that your time has passed. But God's plan is not dependent on your perfection. His grace covers your imperfections, and His power is made perfect in your weakness. The Bible is filled with examples of ordinary people who, despite their flaws and failures, were used mightily by God. Moses doubted his ability to lead. David stumbled into sin, and Peter denied Christ. Yet their destinies were fulfilled because God's plan for their lives was unshakable. He doesn't call the perfect, He perfects the called. This unshakable plan is not just for the grand moments of life, but also for the quiet, everyday steps of faith. It is active in the big decisions and the small choices, in the victories and the struggles. Trusting in His plan means releasing the need to control, and instead embracing the assurance that He is in control. It is living with the confidence that no matter what happens, His purpose for your life will prevail. God's plan is not just a hope for tomorrow, it is a reality unfolding today. Nothing in heaven or on earth can stop it. Obstacles are often seen as barriers, as reasons to doubt or give up, but through the lens of faith, they become stepping stones. Every challenge, every difficulty, and every moment of resistance is an opportunity for growth and transformation. They are not meant to deter us, but to strengthen us, to refine our character, and to prepare us for the next stage of our journey. God allows these moments not as punishments, but as purposeful parts of His divine plan, shaping us into who we are meant to be. When we encounter obstacles, it is natural to feel frustrated or disheartened. We might question why things aren't going according to our expectations, or why we seem to face resistance at every turn. However, it is in these very moments that God's greater purpose is at work. Challenges teach us perseverance, deepen our faith, and remind us to rely not on our own strength, but on His. The story of Joseph in the Bible is a perfect example. Betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, and wrongfully imprisoned, Joseph faced trial after trial. Yet every obstacle he encountered was a step closer to the fulfillment of God's promise. What others intended for harm, God used for good, positioning Joseph to save a nation. Obstacles also reveal our hidden strengths and abilities. Often it is only when we are pushed to our limits that we discover the depth of our resilience and the power of our faith. Challenges force us to step out of our comfort zones, to confront our fears, and to grow in ways we never thought possible. They remind us that we are not walking alone, that God is with us, guiding us through every trial. When David faced Goliath, it wasn't just a battle between a shepherd and a giant, it was a moment of preparation for the leadership and victories that lay ahead. The obstacles in David's life were stepping stones, building his courage, trust in God, and readiness to fulfill his destiny. It's also important to recognize that obstacles often redirect us to something better. What may feel like a failure or a closed door is often God's way of steering us toward a greater opportunity. We may not understand it at the time, but hindsight reveals how the challenges we faced were necessary steps on the path to our calling. Think of the Israelites wandering in the wilderness. What seemed like a delay was God's way of preparing them to enter the promised land. Without the lessons learned in the wilderness, they would not have been ready to claim their inheritance. Obstacles demand trust. They require us to believe that God's plan is greater than our understanding, and that every step, even the difficult ones, is part of His purpose. They remind us to lean into His strength, to keep moving forward even when the way seems unclear. The very challenges that seem to block our path are often the tools God uses to shape us, elevate us, and propel us toward His perfect plan. Human interference cannot alter God's divine will. This truth is both reassuring and empowering because it reminds us that no person, no decision, and no opposition can derail the plans that God has set in motion. His authority is absolute, and His purposes are immovable. While people may attempt to hinder, delay, or even work against you, their actions are never outside the bounds of God's sovereignty. What God has ordained for your life will come to pass, regardless of human attempts to disrupt it. People may try to discourage you, diminish your confidence, or convince you that you are unworthy of what God has in store. They may judge you based on your past, misunderstand your intentions, or resist your progress. Yet none of this can undo what God has already decided. His plans are not subject to public opinion or reliant on human approval. When God opens a door, no one can shut it. When He declares a promise over your life, no amount of opposition can nullify it. This truth was evident in the life of Jesus, whose mission faced relentless opposition. Despite the schemes of the Pharisees, the betrayal by Judas, and the disbelief of many, God's purpose was fulfilled. No human effort could stop the redemption of humanity through Christ. Sometimes the interference of others feels overwhelming. You may encounter betrayal, jealousy, or unfair treatment. It can feel as though people's actions are succeeding in holding you back. But remember, God is not surprised by any of it. He sees what you cannot see and knows what you do not know. He has already accounted for every challenge and every act of opposition. In fact, he can use these very things to advance his plan. What others mean for harm, God can transform into good. The story of Nehemiah rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem is a powerful example. Despite the ridicule and sabotage attempts from his enemies, the walls were completed because Nehemiah relied on God's guidance. Human interference could not stop the divine assignment. God's will is also independent of human cooperation. You don't need everyone to believe in you or support you for God's plan to succeed. He often works through unlikely circumstances and unexpected people. Consider how God used Moses, a man with a speech impediment, to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. Pharaoh resisted time and again, but God's plan prevailed. Similarly, God used Esther, a young Jewish woman, to save her people despite the schemes of Haman. Human efforts to thwart God's purpose only set the stage for His glory to be revealed. It is easy to feel discouraged when others misunderstand or oppose you. Yet these moments are opportunities to trust in God's higher ways. His plans are unstoppable, His power unmatched, and His wisdom unsearchable. What He has set in motion cannot be undone by human hands. People may try to interfere, but they are ultimately powerless against the will of the Almighty. Every attempt to block your progress only serves to magnify His ability to accomplish His purpose in your life. God's timing is perfect, a truth that often challenges our human perspective, but ultimately brings peace when we embrace it. In a world driven by deadlines, urgency, and instant gratification, waiting for God's timing can feel like a test of patience and faith. Yet His timing is not random or delayed, it is divinely orchestrated, unfolding in a way that aligns with His eternal plan and our ultimate good. Every moment, every event, and every season is precisely positioned in the timeline of our lives to fulfill His purpose. When we look at life through our limited lens, we often desire things immediately. We pray for breakthroughs, opportunities, or resolutions, expecting them to happen on our schedule. However, God operates outside of time as we know it. His view is infinite, and He sees the entirety of our lives, the beginning, the middle, and the end. What seems like a delay to us is often preparation in His divine plan. He is not only preparing the blessing, but also preparing us to receive it. Just as a seed must undergo time in the soil before it can grow into a flourishing plant, there are seasons of waiting that are necessary for our growth and readiness. In the Bible, the story of Abraham and Sarah illustrates the perfection of God's timing. They were promised a child, but that promise took years to be fulfilled. Their waiting period was not wasted, it was a time of learning, trusting, and deepening their relationship with God. When Isaac was finally born, it was evident that his arrival was not just about fulfilling a promise, but about showcasing God's faithfulness and sovereignty. Had the promise come immediately, the magnitude of God's work in their lives might have been overlooked. The waiting made the fulfillment even more powerful. God's timing is also protective. There are moments when we feel ready for something, but God, in His wisdom, knows we are not. He may withhold an opportunity, not as a denial, but as a safeguard. If we rush ahead of His plan, we may encounter challenges we are unprepared to face or misuse blessings that we are not yet equipped to handle. His timing ensures that we receive His gifts when they will be most impactful and beneficial, both for us and for those around us. Joseph's journey from the pit to the palace is a profound example. Though his dreams of leadership were real, he had to endure years of trials before stepping into his role. Each delay was part of God's perfect preparation. Trusting God's timing requires surrender. It means letting go of our desire to control and embracing the assurance that He is in control. It is an act of faith to believe that His delays are not denials and that His pace is purposeful. During the waiting seasons, we are called to remain faithful, to keep seeking Him, and to trust that He is working behind the scenes. His timing is never late, and it is always worth the wait. What He has planned for us will come to pass at exactly the right moment. Faith is the foundation of our trust in God's plan. It is the unwavering belief that even when we cannot see the path ahead, God is leading us exactly where we need to go. Faith goes beyond mere optimism or hope. It is the certainty that God is who He says He is and will do what He has promised. This kind of trust is not dependent on circumstances, but is anchored in God's unchanging nature. Faith is what enables us to walk forward, even in uncertainty, because we know that His plan is perfect. Faith often requires stepping into the unknown. It means choosing to believe in God's promises when the evidence around us seems to suggest otherwise. Abraham demonstrated this kind of faith when God called him to leave his homeland and go to a place he did not know. Abraham didn't have a map or a timeline, but he trusted in God's word and obeyed. His faith became the cornerstone of his relationship with God and the fulfillment of the covenant that would bless generations to come. Faith, then, is not about having all the answers, but about trusting the one who does. Life is filled with moments that test our faith. There are times when the way forward seems blocked, when prayers seem unanswered, and when the weight of challenges feels unbearable. In these moments, it is tempting to question God's plan or to rely on our own understanding. Yet faith calls us to surrender our doubts and trust in God's greater perspective. The story of Peter walking on water is a vivid example. When Peter focused on Jesus, he was able to do the impossible. But the moment he let fear and doubt take over, he began to sink. Faith keeps us anchored, even in the storm, reminding us that God is in control. Faith is not passive, it requires action. It is not simply believing in God's promises, but living as though they are already fulfilled. When we act in faith, we align ourselves with God's will and demonstrate our trust in His timing and provision. The woman with the issue of blood acted in faith when she reached out to touch Jesus' garment, believing she would be healed. Her faith was the catalyst for her miracle. In the same way, our faith moves us to take steps, even small ones, toward the promises God has placed before us. Faith also brings peace. When we trust in God's plan, we no longer feel the need to control every detail of our lives. We can rest in the assurance that He is working all things for our good. This peace doesn't mean the absence of trials, but the presence of God's comfort and guidance within them. Faith transforms our perspective, allowing us to see challenges not as obstacles but as opportunities to grow and deepen our reliance on God. Faith is the bridge between God's promises and their fulfillment. It is what allows us to walk forward with confidence, knowing that no matter what happens, God's plan for us is good, and His purposes will prevail. God's plans for us are filled with hope, purpose, and victory, even when life's circumstances suggest otherwise. At times, the challenges and trials we face can cloud our understanding of His intentions, leading us to question whether the difficulties we endure have any purpose. But God's plans are not only good, they are divinely crafted to bring us closer to Him and to fulfill His higher purpose for our lives. His promises remind us that He is always working for our ultimate good, even when we cannot see it. The promise of Jeremiah 29:11 echoes this truth. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. These words were spoken to the Israelites during a time of exile, a season of hardship and uncertainty. Yet even in that difficult moment, God assured them that their suffering was not the end of their story. He had a future of restoration and blessings waiting for them. This assurance is the same for us today. No matter where we find ourselves, God's plans are steadfast, filled with hope, and focused on our growth. Life may often present circumstances that feel anything but hopeful. Perhaps we face setbacks, losses, or prolonged seasons of waiting that leave us wondering if God's promises will ever be fulfilled. It is in these moments that we must cling to His word and trust in His character. God's goodness is not negated by our trials. On the contrary, He uses them to shape us, strengthen our faith, and prepare us for the greater things He has in store. The Apostle Paul understood this deeply when he wrote in Romans 8:28 that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. The victories that come from God's plans often emerge from what initially seems like defeat. The cross is the ultimate example of this. At the time, it appeared to be the end of Jesus' ministry, a moment of despair for His followers. But what looked like loss was actually the greatest victory in history. Through the cross, God's plan of redemption for humanity was fulfilled, proving that His ways are far higher and more powerful than we can comprehend. In our lives, too, what seems like failure or delay can be the groundwork for a divine breakthrough. God's plans also carry an eternal perspective, reminding us that our hope is not confined to this world. While His blessings are evident in our present lives, His ultimate goal is to draw us closer to Him and prepare us for eternity. The hope we find in His plans transcends temporary circumstances, grounding us in the assurance of His unchanging love. Every step of the journey, whether filled with joy or trials, is part of His perfect design for our lives. Even in the darkest moments, God's plans shine through with purpose and hope. His goodness, faithfulness, and promises are unshakable, giving us the strength to persevere, trust, and walk forward in confidence. The victory He has prepared for us is not just for today, it is for eternity, and it is certain. In the grand tapestry of life, God's plan is the thread that binds everything together with purpose, hope, and love. It is a plan that transcends our understanding, yet it is always for our good. Through His timing, His promises, and the unwavering assurance of His faithfulness, we are reminded that nothing, no obstacle, no delay, no challenge can hinder what He has ordained for us. Our role is to trust, to walk in faith, and to align ourselves with His will, knowing that He is always working behind the scenes. His plans are not just about achieving victories or receiving blessings, they are about transforming us, drawing us closer to Him, and fulfilling a purpose far greater than we can imagine. With God, we are never alone, never forgotten, and always on the path toward a hope-filled future. Let us hold fast to this truth, rest in His promises, and move forward with confidence, for His plans will always prevail.
Let us begin this journey of self-discovery and empowerment. For in these principles lies the key to your freedom, your peace, and your ultimate power. Principle 1, the power of consciousness. The first and most fundamental principle we must grasp is that consciousness is the only reality. Everything you perceive, everything you experience, every circumstance in your life is but an outpicturing of your consciousness. The world you see is a mirror reflecting back to you your own mental states, your own assumptions about reality. Many of you may find this concept challenging to accept at first. You may argue, but Nevill, I see a solid world around me. I feel it, I interact with it. Surely this is reality. To this I say, what you perceive as solid and real is nothing more than a shadow cast by the light of your conscience. Consider for a moment your dreams. When you're in a dream, does it not feel real? Do you not interact with people, touch objects, experience emotions? Yet when you awaken, you realize it was all a creation of your mind. I tell you now, what you call your waking life is no different. It is a dream, a grand collective dream, but a dream nonetheless. Once you truly grasp this principle, once you internalize it and live from it, you will understand that nothing can affect you unless you allow it to affect your consciousness. For you are not a powerless observer of reality, but the very creator of it. This understanding is the foundation upon which all else is built. It is the bedrock of your invincibility, the source of your power. For if consciousness is the only reality, and you are the master of your consciousness, then you are the master of your reality. But how do we wield this power? How do we shape our consciousness to create the reality we desire? This leads us seamlessly into our second principle. Principle 2, the law of assumption. The law of assumption states that if you assume a state to be true and persist in that assumption, it must harden into fact. This law is the cornerstone of creation, the very mechanism by which you shape your reality. When you assume a state, you are essentially declaring to the universe, this is who I am. This is what is true for me. And the universe, being nothing more than an outpicturing of your consciousness, has no choice but to conform to your assumption. But remember, my dear friends, this law works both ways. If you persistently assume limitation, lack, or fear, these two will harden into fact. This is why so many people find themselves trapped in cycles of negativity and misfortune. They are unwittingly assuming these states into existence. The key then is to consciously choose your assumptions. Assume states of abundance, of joy, of success, of love. Persist in these assumptions regardless of any seeming contradictions in your external reality. For remember, the external is but a shadow of your past assumptions. As you change your assumptions, the shadow must change to match the new shape of your consciousness. This principle of assumption is your shield against the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. For how can external circumstances affect you when you know that you are the very author of those circumstances? But assumption alone is not enough. To truly harness the power of this principle, we must understand the role of feeling, which brings us to our third principle. Principle 3, the importance of feeling. Now, as we delve deeper into these principles, we come to a crucial understanding. It is not enough to merely think about your desired state. You must feel it. You must embody it with every fiber of your being. Feeling is the secret, my dear listeners. It is the bridge between your conscious mind and your subconscious mind, between your current reality and your desired reality. When you can genuinely feel the reality of your desire, when you can live in the emotion of your wish fulfilled, you activate a power beyond your wildest imagination. Think for a moment of a time when you were deeply in love. Recall the feeling, the emotion of it. How did it color your world? How did it affect your perceptions, your actions, your very being? This is the power of feeling. It transforms you from the inside out. In the same way, when you can feel the reality of desire, when you can live in the emotion of your wish fulfilled, you transform your entire being. You begin to think, act, and perceive in alignment with your desired reality. And as you do so, the external world has no choice but to reflect this new state back to you. This principle of feeling is your armor against the assaults of doubt and fear. For when you are filled with the feeling of your desire fulfilled, how can doubt find a foothold? How can fear take root? They simply cannot penetrate the radiant energy of your assumed state. But how do we generate these feelings? How do we create such vivid, transformative emotions? This brings us to our fourth principle, a principle that unlocks the full creative power of your mind. Principle 4, the power of imagination. As we progress in our understanding, we come to the fourth principle, the power of imagination. My dear friends, your imagination is not some idle fantasy factory. It is the very workshop of creation. It is the place where all things, all experiences, all states of being are first conceived before they are brought forth into physical reality. Einstein once said, imagination is more important than knowledge. For knowledge is limited to all we now know and understand, while imagination embraces the entire world, and all there ever will be to know and understand. Your imagination is the gateway to infinite possibilities. It is the realm where you can try on new states of being, where you can explore new realities, where you can shape your world according to your deepest desires. When you imagine, you are not merely daydreaming. You are engaging in the most profound act of creation. For remember, consciousness is the only reality, and your imagination is the tool by which you shape your consciousness. Imagine yourself as the person you wish to be. See yourself living the life you desire. Feel the emotions associated with your wish fulfilled. Do this vividly, do this often, and do this with the firm conviction that what you are imagining is not some far-off possibility, but a present reality. This principle of imagination is your sword against the limitations of your current circumstances. For how can your current reality constrain you when you can, at any moment, step into a new reality in your imagination? But what of the past? What of the memories and experiences that seem to contradict our desired state? This brings us to our fifth principle, a principle that grants you power over time itself. Principle 5, the art of revision. Now we come to a principle that many find particularly powerful, the art of revision. This principle teaches us that we can go back into our past and change it. Not in a physical sense, of course, but in our consciousness, which, as we've established, is the only reality. You might ask, but Nevill, how can we change the past? Isn't it fixed? To this I say, the past only exists in your memory. And memory is not fixed. It is fluid, constantly being rewritten by your present state of consciousness. When you revise a past event, you are not denying that it happened. Rather, you are choosing to remember it differently. You are rewriting the story in a way that serves your present and future. For example, if you had an argument with a loved one, instead of replaying the argument over and over in your mind, reinforcing the negative emotions associated with it, you can revise it. Imagine the conversation going differently. See yourself